Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for February's Roll of Reads. So Roll of Reads is the TBR game that I play every single month to determine what I will be reading throughout the coming month. And of course, it being the end of January, this is February's Roll of Reads. If you have never watched any of my Roll of Reads videos before, then I will link my video that I put up at the beginning of January where I go through all of the rules and the gameplay, so you can go and check that out and acquaint yourself with how everything works. If you haven't watched my January TBR, then you may not be aware that I have changed some of the rules and different things like that. So again, I would suggest that you go and check out that video. Like I said, it will be in the description below. So, I do have a few things that I want to try and get on my TBR for February, so we'll just see what happens with the rolls, whether I can squeeze books in and all of that sort of thing. There are two readathons that I'd like to participate in throughout the month of February. One is an entire month-long readathon, and that is Blackathon. This has been created and hosted by Jessie over at Bowties and Books. I will link their channel in the description below so you can go and check them out. I believe this year they'll be joined by a bunch of other booktubers and also Instagrammers, and there's a variety of different ways that you can get involved, so I definitely suggest that you go and check that out. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. So I want to try and see how I go with this TBR to see if I can get some books that will work for Blackathon onto my TBR as well. And then in the first full week of February, so from the 7th to the 13th, Jade from JD Ray Reads is hosting Polarthon. This has been going on for a while now, but I've never actually participated, so I decided that maybe it was time that I would. There are two teams for this one. One is an animal team and one is an explorers team, and it's all based around getting to the top of a snowy mountain. I would like to join the explorers team if I can, but again, it's going to depend on how my rolls go this month as well. The Explorers team is hosted, so the whole readathon is created and hosted by Jade, but the teams are hosted by two different booktubers. So we have Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin on the Explorers, and Pris from, I think her channel is Pris Sprints, I'm not 100% sure, but altogether they make up Middle Grade Monthly. Anyway, those are the things that I'd like to try and fit in. I also have the Last to Read book club, which is of course the book club that I run with Ellie from Earl Books and Lana from Lore and Lullabies. This month in February our book is Lost in the Neverwoods by Aidan Thomas, so if I can I'd like to try and squeeze that on, but of course who knows, we'll just see how we go. Like I said, there's a few other things I'm going to try and get on there, but I'll let you know how I go and if there's extras at the end once we've done the actual game. I do also have a coffee here this morning, so just give me a sec. It is the 28th of January today when I'm filming. The video is going up tomorrow on the 29th, so I still technically have a few days left of February. So now I need to go through all the books, sorry, a few days left of January even. So now I need to go through and look at all the books I should have read in January and see how I went, to see if I need to include any punishments this time around. As you may know, if I do get punishments, then I have a bunch of punishment cards and I will roll my 20-sided dice to determine where on the board the punishment card or cards will go. And then if I roll that number and get those cards, then I have to keep replacing them from the punishment cards. But it's always, you know, a gamble whether or not I land on the punishment cards. So that is how that works. Anyway, let's have a look now and see how I went with January's TBR. The first roll that I got was a reread, and for this one I chose Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I didn't read that, but I won't be trying to read this one because I haven't started it, and there are 400 and something pages of the book, and I mean I could say that I'm going to potentially get to it or at least start it, but the next book was Second Chance, and it's The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. As you can see from the bookmark, I have started, but I'm only 50 pages in. So I am honestly not going to read 500 and something pages and 400 and something pages in the next 3.5 days. I could pretend that I would start both, but the honest truth is I'm only going to be able to get through one, potentially even not the entirety of one, so I'm going to stick to the bone season. I'd rather not push myself, make a big stress out of the last few days of the month, so I'm going to focus on the bone season. I did read The Pale Dreamer, which wasn't on the TBR, but is the prequel to this, so I mean potentially, it was quite short, so potentially you could argue that I could have just started with this, but I think it was a good way to go. But anyway, the next roll was this, and I have started this. So we've got one punishment so far. Next up, we had non-fiction, and for this I chose Death Row, The Final Minutes by Michelle Lyons. I DNF'd this one. So DNFs count as read. I don't have to include a punishment. Then I had retelling, and for this I had to read Lore by Alexandra Bracken, which I did read. This is part of the Recreate book club. And yes, like I said, I did read this one. So yeah, I should just say, before I go any further, as I'm sure you probably know because I say it every time, but anybody that I talk about in this video, if they have a YouTube channel, the channel is in the description below, so you can go and check that out. Alright, then I got a 20, which is a crit, which basically means I can do whatever I like. Now, I did look at the prompt in case it was going to work for anything I wanted, and I got Twitter poll, but I decided to ignore that, and instead I chose The Toll by Neil Shusterman. This is the final book in the Arc of the Scythe trilogy, and this is the January pick for the Last to Read book club, which again is my book club. As you can see, I am about 2/3 of the way through, just less than 2/3 of the way through. I will definitely get this finished. I am reading roughly 5 chapters a day, so that does not, yeah, that's counting as a read, no punishment. Then I got Face on the cover, and for this I decided to read When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain by Ni Vo, which you will see an image of just here. This is I read for Buzzword, which is the year-long challenge that Kayla over at Books and Lala runs, and the buzzword that you had to have in the title for January was who, what, when, where, why, and how. When the tiger came down the mountain. Like I said, I read it, so yeah, it's read. Then, unfortunately, I thought it was going to be the final roll, but I actually got a 1, so it wasn't. For that, I got Inspired, a movie you've already seen. So, for this one, I went quite old school, and I read The Bone Collector by Jeffrey Deaver, and like I just said, yes, I did read it, so no punishment for that one. And then the final roll, and it was in fact the final roll, I got friend picks. So I asked Paige from Pages with Paige to choose me a book, and she chose The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams, which I really enjoyed. So thank you very much, Paige. Great choice. And yeah, that one was read. So that means I have one punishment that I have to include in my setup. So yeah, I'm gonna drink this coffee and then go set up the board. I fear I'm going to have an extremely helpful cat. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is determine where my punishment card is going to go. So I'm going to roll my d20. It will go on number 5. I have shuffled all of these already, so I'll pop it on number 5. So number 5 is punishment card. Alright, and then I'll place all the rest of the cards out. Now I'm going to roll to figure out how many rolls I'll do, how many books I'll read. 3. I'm okay with that. So as you guys just saw, I got a 3 on the 8-sided dice. So I have 3 rolls that I need to do, which is pretty good. Roll of Reads isn't always that nice to me, as you guys may know, so I'm pretty happy with 3. It could make it a bit tricky to include some of the books that I want / need to try and get to, but at the same time it leaves me plenty of leeway to include some of those books. Oh, and as you also just saw, number 5 is where the punishment is, so obviously if I land on 5, I get the punishment prompt. Anyway, let's go and do the first roll. Alright, roll number 1 is a 12. So number 12 is over here. Second chance. Got that last month. Okay. Have a bit of a think about that. Second chance. Alright. Replace the card. So as you guys just saw, I got the number 12, and on number 12 I had Second Chance. So I might be possibly stretching this a little bit, but it's my game. I can do that. I have decided to go with Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is one of my self-destruct books. Now the reason for that is I've actually already read this one. I quite enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars at the time, but I was reasonably new to BookTube. I mean, I'm still reasonably new to BookTube, but I was quite new to BookTube at the time, and it was very hyped up at the time, and I kind of think I might have got a bit carried away with all of the hype and potentially upped the rating to slightly more than I actually thought that it was. Like I said, it's not that I didn't enjoy it, I definitely did. But I put it on the self-destruct because I wanted to reread it and see whether I still enjoyed it as much and whether it was the kind of book that I potentially would come back to on other occasions. So whether I should keep it and, you know, have it as a potential reread at some point, lend it out to people, etc, etc, or whether I should keep it or not keep it, because if I like it but don't absolutely love it and don't think I'm going to come back to it, there's really no point in having it on my shelf. So that is why that is there, and that is also why it's Second Chance. So it's giving it a new chance to see what happens with it. So this is a book about, it's imagining that a woman gained the presidency of the United States, and it is a love story between her son and the Prince of England, or the Prince of Wales. So yeah, it's imaginary obviously, but yeah, it deals with a lot of the different politics involved with that, and yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, so that was number 1. Let's go see how we go with number 2. And second roll, when shade has moved. Very helpful, cat. Okay, so hi. That's so helpful. Am I just going to roll with you there, am I? Alright, second roll. 7. A pretty cover. Okay, replace that one. So for roll number 2, I got number 7. So that means that because we have 3 rolls to do, I won't have to do an extra roll for if I roll the same number 3 times, because I can't now. But anyway, I got a pretty cover for this one. So for that, I have decided to go with Frostheart Rise of the World Eater by Jamie Littler. This one was gifted to me by Paige from Pages with Paige, so thank you so much for that, Paige. I just think this cover is adorable, and I love the fact that it's got this little, I don't even know what you call it, because it's not a step back, because it's not cutting the edge off. It's, yeah, I don't know what you call that, but I just think it's beautiful. I absolutely love it, and I'm super excited to read it. This is the 3rd and final book in the Frostheart series. So this is a sort of polar fantasy, so it will work very well for Polarthon as well. I don't know if it's technically a different world or if it's supposed to be a future apocalyptic type world. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, we follow Ash. And Ash is I don't really want to go into spoilers, but we follow Ash, who is a young boy who is, for reasons, thrown out of where he lives, and he joins the crew of the Frostheart. The Frostheart is a sleigh. In this world, it's all completely covered by ice and snow, and so they have sleighs, the crew of which are explorers, and they go out into the world, and in the world there are monsters called Leviathans who live in the wilds, and the Frostheart, these sleighs, including the Frostheart, kind of brave that and deliver messages and supplies and all this sort of stuff between citadels and all this sort of thing. So we follow Ash and the crew of the Frostheart, and like I said, this is the 3rd and final book. I absolutely love the first 2 books, and I'm super excited to read this one. That's the next one. I feel like I'm kind of bumbling a lot in this video. I don't know why. I apologise. Fingers crossed. This is our 3rd and final roll. So let's go and find out. I'm sticking to 3, I think. I've got to stop saying that. Genre wheel pick. Okay, cool. Place the 1. And of course,
Alright.
I spoke too soon because I got a 1. Naturally. Which means I have at least one more roll to do. Fingers crossed it's, in fact, will be the final roll. But in any case, roll number 3, I got a 1, which was genre wheel pick. So what I've done is I've downloaded a little spinny wheel app on my phone, and I've put in a bunch of different genres, and I will do the spin, and then the first genre that comes up is the genre I will choose from. So let's do that now. I'll just screen record. I'll put it up here, obviously, what I'm doing. Okay, and let's go. Alright, so we got literary fiction. This actually works really, really, really well because, like I said before, I want to join in Blackathon, and with Blackathon this year they're having teams, and one of the teams is literary, historical, and contemporary. So I've decided to go with After Story by Larissa Barrent. Isn't that a beautiful cover? So this is, I think this is literary fiction. Her previous book that one of her, she's written a few books, but one of the books that I've read of hers kind of straddled the line, I think, between historical and literary. So I'm going to call this literary. So it is about an Indigenous author. No. Larissa Barrent is an Indigenous author, so Australian Aboriginal author. It's about an Indigenous lawyer, Jasmine, who decides to take her mother, Della, on a tour of England's most revered literary sites, and she hopes it will bring them closer together. There was a tragedy a number of years, 20 odd years previously, that had a really big effect on Jasmine's community. It seems to be one of those stories that I like a lot. So it seems to be one of these like switching backwards and forwards in time and finding out some of the secrets from the family history and how that affects the current present. Yeah, I think it will be really good. I really enjoyed Home, which was written by Larissa Barrent as well, which is the other fiction book of hers that I've read. Words can't word today. But yeah, so I'm excited for this one. Alright, so let's go and hopefully do what is actually our final roll. Number 4. Let's hope that this will be the final roll. 19. Alright, that is a final roll, and we have Mentioned in the Gilmore Girls. Fantastic. It is our actual final roll because I got 19, which is fantastic, and I got Mentioned in the Gilmore Girls. I'm going to choose Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier because this was mentioned in the Gilmore Girls. The reason I'm coming back to it, I often don't when I miss them, but this is the book from my In Real Life book club, which is the Book Into Film Club, and we meet up at the end of each month to watch a adaptation of the book and chat about differences, etc. But we haven't organised January's meetup yet because, long story short, but basically the Tasmanian government, in all of their wisdom, decided to completely open the borders to everybody, and so we now have COVID quite widespread in Tasmania. I mean, compared to a lot of the world, it's probably a drop in the ocean, but for us, given that we had nothing for like a year and a half, it's quite a bit. So we are putting off our meeting for the Book Into Film Club until things have stabilised a little bit, which means I have a bit more time, so I will fit this on to February's TBR instead. And like I said, it was mentioned in the Gilmore Girls. So this is a classic gothic novel. We follow an unnamed protagonist, and she meets a man while she's on holiday. I think she's a companion to an older woman, and she meets a man who she then marries, and he had been married before and his wife had died, and the dead wife is Rebecca, and she goes and lives in his estate called Mandalay, and it's completely just, everyone's obsessed with Rebecca. No one wants to forget her. This unnamed protagonist is constantly compared to Rebecca, and it's, yeah, it is a bit of a gothic mystery, basically. And I have read it before, but I don't really remember very much about it. So I'm very, very excited to reread it and see what I think of it as I'm a bit older and stuff. But yeah, that is my final choice. So that means for Roll of Reads, I have to read 4 books. So I have to read Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I have to read Frostheart, Rise of the World Eater by Jamie Littler. I have to read After Story by Larissa Barrent. And I have to read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. But like I said, there are a few other things that I want to try and do in February. So, first of all is the Last to Read book club. Obviously, as I've said, is my book club I run with Lana and Ellie. Our book for February is Lost in the Neverwoods by Aidan Thomas. I don't really know a huge amount about this one. I believe it's a Peter Pan reimagining, and I believe it's supposed to be like quite a long time after the events of Peter Pan have happened, and Wendy is uncertain whether those were, all the memories she has were dreams, if it really happened, and then suddenly Peter comes back and there's a mystery, and yeah. Sounds really good. I've heard really great things about it. So if you want to join us for the Last to Read book club for February and read Lost in the Neverwoods by Aidan Thomas, my announcement video is linked in the description below, so you can go and check that out, along with the Twitter and Discord, so you can go and join us and chat about everything. So that's a book I have to read. I'm also doing a buddy read with Helen from Helen's Bookhaven, and we are reading The Foundling by Stacey Halls. I don't know a lot about this book. I know that it's beautiful. I know that it's a historical fiction. So it's about a woman who leaves her illegitimate daughter at a hospital, but then she returns a few years later to claim the child, and then finds out that the child has already been taken apparently by her. So it's editing Mel here. What happened here is that my camera stopped filming, and apparently I didn't realise for quite a while. When I did realise, I started it again, but I should have checked and I didn't. So I was talking about joining in Terrying Through Time, which is a read-along reading the Discworld novels by Terry Pratchett. That is something that is hosted by Paige from Pages with Paige, along with a few other hosts, and I will link all of their channels in the description below, because I can't off the top of my head recall who they all are, but I know definitely Paige from Pages with Paige, and also Cara from Bianca Reads. But yeah, like I said, there's another two people who I can't recall. So they're doing it with two different ways that you can read Discworld novels. The first one is that you can read chronologically, so in publication order, and then I'm going to send you back to proper filming of the video, because that's where I pick up talking about. So yes, so the other way that you can do it is, like I said, reading through different series within the whole entire series, and they have started with the Watch series. So in January they read Guards, which is the first of the Watch books, and then in February they'll be reading Men at Arms. So I'll be reading this one. And yeah, it's a buddy, it is a buddy read, but it is also a reread for me. I am super excited. I love Terry Pratchett. I really enjoyed rereading Guards. It's been quite a while since I've read Guards and Men at Arms, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. So yeah, if you don't know, the Discworld series is a fantasy series, but it's a bit hard to explain because it's not your usual fantasy. The point of Pratchett is not a big fantasy epic story. The point is that he's making commentary on our world, and being very irreverent, but he's doing it through a fantasy lens. But yeah, I think they're amazing, and I highly recommend that you read some at some point, like now, because you can join us in this read along. Then I am currently still reading Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. This is the second book in the Strange the Dreamer duology. I'm buddy reading this with my friend Alison. We have read the first part. We are supposed to be chatting possibly tonight, possibly tomorrow, about this first part that we've read, and then we'll read the next lot. So potentially I will be halfway through this book by the time February starts, but either way, we're buddy reading it, we're just taking our time, so I'm just letting you know that I'm still reading it, and it will continue through February. As I said before, I am wanting to take part in Blackathon. This year, like I said, there are teams, so you can do it either through Instagram or through YouTube, as I mostly focus on YouTube from a point of view of my bookish content. I'll be doing it through the YouTube prompts. So I've decided, because I got literary fiction and because I chose After Story by Larissa Brent being an Australian Aboriginal author, I decided that I would go down the literary contemporary historical fiction route, because this could also potentially be considered historical, so it fits either way. So that team is run by the channel Luxurious Blue, and yeah, the prompts are: number one is to read a book that explores the duality of blood versus found family, which I think this one will do pretty well. So it's talking about the community in which Jasmine lives, and it's talking about her and her mother. So I believe that will fit the bill for that one. Then there is a book that is not set in the UK, US or Canada. Unfortunately, some of this will take place in England, but it's written by an Australian Aboriginal author and some of it will take place in Australia. So I think that counts. I'm counting it anyway. And then there is the prompt, a book with neon on the cover, and also a group book. The group book is Black Girls Must Die Exhausted by Jane Allen, and as you can see from the image on the screen here, I think this is the US cover, has some quite bright neon-y pink. So I'm counting that one for both group book and neon. I did watch Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin talking about this book the other day, and it does sound like it could potentially be quite hard-hitting, and it sounds like it might deal with some stuff that is going to be quite close to the bone for me. So I don't know how I'm going to go with it. I will see how I go. I'll give it a shot. It's going to count for those two prompts. So we'll just see how we go. And then, as I have said already, there is Polarthon by JD Ray Reads, and I am going to join Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin's team, which is the Explorers, and I'll put the little graphic up here that Jade has provided. So for Explorers, I have to go up the mountain. I can double up as long as the way I double up is going up the mountain in terms of prompts. I'm going to say that I'm going to read Frostheart for them all. So this is definitely an adventure. It has a cold word in the title, Frost. It has a foiled cover, so there are little foiled elements on the cover. Now, Icy Magic, I'm gonna say it has Icy Magic, even though I'm not actually sure if that's technically true, because it more focuses on singing magic, but I think that there's going to be some Icy Magic. I'm hoping that it works. If not, then I'm doing a dodgy, because I am also reading this as a polar fantasy. So yeah, this is what I'm reading for Polarthon. Hopefully it will work. If not, then oh well. Don't want to add too many more books. I promise this is the final lot of books I need to talk to you about, but I also have pre-ordered House of Sky and Breath, which is the second book in the Crescent City series, and my friend Max messaged me and was like, it comes out on the 15th, we're reading it on the 15th, right? I don't know if I'll get it on the 15th, to be honest, but as soon as I get it, I'm going to read it, hopefully with Max and my friend Rachel. I would also really like to reread the first one, but I feel like February's TBR is already pretty big, even though I only ended up rolling for 4 books. So I'll just see how I go. It's quite chunky, and I anticipate that the second one will be also quite chunky, but I read that in about 2 to 3 days, so potentially I'll be able to squeeze it in, but I'm just going to have to see how it goes.
I just finished filming, put everything away, sat down to edit, and realised that I'd forgotten to mention, or come back to, buzzword. So you may have noticed that all of these books, none of these books I should say, have a buzzword. So this month's buzzword is something like my, mine, me, you, something along those lines. So I am going to try and fit in My Dark Vanessa. I'm not sure about that, but I'll see how I go, but it's on my radar. Just thought I'd jump in and let you know
that is
about
my
that.
February TBR. Like I said before, I feel like I was quite rambly and a bit all over the place in this video, so I apologise if that's how it came across, but yeah, apologies if that was all a bit all over the place. I don't really know why. I guess I'm just in a weird mood. Anyhow, that is my TBR. If you liked this TBR game, then I highly recommend that you subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for the next couple of weeks for a very exciting readathon announcement. Please comment below if you have read any of these books and you have any thoughts on those books, if you're intending to go on in any of the readathons that I have talked about, if you are going to join myself, Ellie and Lana for the Last to Read book club. Just basically put a comment below if you would like to. If you would like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then in honour of Frostheart, leave me some kind of cold, frosty, snowy emoji. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.